17-year-old Emma climbed the narrow wooden stairs to her grandmother's attic. Each step creaked under her feet. The air smelled of old wood and forgotten memories. Dust particles danced in the afternoon sunlight that streamed through her. Small window dot Emma had been avoiding this place for 3 months, ever since Grandma Rose died. Everything felt different. The house felt too quiet. The kitchen smelled wrong without fresh bread baking. Even Emma's own bedroom at home felt strange now that her parents were getting divorced. She moved slowly between the cardboard boxes and old furniture. Her grandmother had kept everything. Christmas decorations from 20 years ago, photo albums, with yellow pages, clothes that smelled like lavender soap. Emma touched each item gently, as if they might break. In the far corner, something caught her eye. Under a faded blue quilt, she saw the edge of something dark. Emma lifted the soft fabric and found an old leather book. The cover was worn smooth. From years of handling, the leather was deep brown, like chocolate, with tiny cracks running across its surface. Emma picked up the book carefully. It felt heavy in her hands, but not from thickness. Something about it felt important, like holding a piece of history. When she opened it, her heart sank. The pages were damaged. Some were torn in half. Others had pieces missing. Many pages were gone completely, leaving only empty spaces where stories used to live. She turned the pages slowly. What remained showed handwriting in different styles. Some was neat and careful. Other writing was messy, like someone had written quickly while feeling strong emotions. The ink colors varied too. Black, blue, even some in faded purple. One torn page made Emma stop breathing for a moment. In careful handwriting, someone had written, "Even in the darkest times, I found a reason to smile." My children's laughter reminded me that joy still existed in the world. Another fragment, written in shaky letters, said, "The kindness of strangers saved my spirit when I thought I had nothing left." A cup of tea and a listening ear changed everything. Emma felt something strange happening in her chest. These broken pieces of stories seemed to speak directly to her heart. She had been feeling so alone since her grandmother died. Her parents were too busy fighting to notice how sad she was. Her friends at school seemed to have perfect lives with no problems, but these torn pages whispered something different. They told her that other people had felt lost too. Other people had survived dark times and found light again. The incomplete stories felt like puzzle pieces, waiting to be put back together. Emma gathered the loose fragments carefully. Some pieces were so small she could barely read the words. Others were larger, telling parts of stories that made her want to know more. Who were these people? What had happened to them? How had their stories ended? As she held the damaged book, Emma felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. Maybe these broken stories could teach her something about healing her own broken heart. Maybe the missing pieces held secrets about how to be strong when everything felt wrong. She made a decision that surprised even herself. She would find the missing pieces. She would discover who had written these words and learn their complete stories, somehow. She knew this was important, not just for the book, but for herself. Emma looked at the inside cover of the book. In her grandmother's familiar handwriting, she saw words that made her smile for the first time in weeks. Property of Rose Bennett, stories of our town's heart. Her grandmother had collected these stories, but why and where were the missing pieces? Emma stood up, holding the book against her chest. The attic suddenly felt less lonely. The dusty air seemed lighter. She had found something valuable among all these old things, a mystery that connected her to her grandmother and to other people she had never met. She walked to the small window and looked out at their quiet town. Somewhere out there were the missing pieces of these stories. Somewhere were people who might remember the words that had been torn away. Emma felt excited for the first time since her grandmother's funeral. The book felt warm in her hands, as if it was alive with all the emotions that had been written on its pages. Emma understood now that she was holding more than just paper and ink. She was holding pieces of people's hearts, their struggles, their victories tomorrow. She would begin looking for the missing pieces. Tonight, she would read every fragment, carefully, looking for clues about where to search next. The torn book had given her something precious, a purpose and the beginning of hope that her own broken heart might heal too. As the sun began to set, Emma carefully carried the book downstairs. She had work to do, and for the first time in months, she felt ready to begin. The next morning, Emma walked through the town center with the torn book tucked safely in her backpack. She had spent the night reading every fragment, looking for clues about where the missing pieces might be. Her first stop was the public library, a small brick building that had stood in the town square for over 50 years. Mrs. Thompson looked up from her desk when Emma entered. The elderly librarian had silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She had worked at the library for as long as Emma could remember. Emma approached the desk nervously. She pulled out the damaged book and placed it carefully on the counter. Mrs. Thompson's face changed immediately. Her eyes grew wide, then soft with memory. "Oh, my dear child," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you find this?" Emma explained about discovering the book in her grandmother's attic as she spoke. Mrs. Thompson reached out and touched the torn pages gently, as if greeting an old friend. "Your grandmother collected these stories for many years," Mrs. Thompson said. "She believed that everyone had something beautiful inside them, especially during their hardest times. She said that sharing our struggles made them easier to bear." Mrs. Thompson stood up and walked to her desk drawer. Her hands shook slightly. As she opened it from inside, she pulled out a yellowed piece of paper. Folded many times, the paper was soft from years of handling. "Rose gave me this page 20 years ago," Mrs. Thompson said. "My husband had just passed away from cancer. I felt like my world had ended. I could not eat or sleep. I did not want to see anyone or do anything." She unfolded the paper carefully. Emma could see that it matched the other fragments from the book. The handwriting was different from her grandmother's. Someone else had written these words long ago. Mrs. Thompson read aloud. "Loss teaches us that love never truly ends. It lives on in every kind act we do in memory of those we've lost. When we help others, we keep the spirit of our loved ones alive in the world." Emma felt tears start in her eyes. These words seemed written just for her, even though they were decades old. "This page saved me," Mrs. Thompson continued. "It reminded me that my husband would want me to keep living, keep helping people. So I came back to work here at the library. Every day, I tried to help someone find exactly the book they need. It is my way of honoring his memory." Emma carefully took the page and placed it with the others. She thanked Mrs. Thompson and promised to visit again soon. Her next stop was Davy's Corner Shop, a small store that sold newspapers, candy, and basic groceries. Mr. Davies was behind the counter, ranging cigarettes on a shelf. He was a short man with grey hair and laugh lines round his eyes. When Emma showed him the book, Mr. Davies stopped what he was doing. His eyes grew misty as he looked at the torn pages. "I have not seen this in years," he said quietly. "Your grandmother was a special woman. She came to see me during the worst time of my life." Mr. Davies sat down on a stool behind the counter. He looked out the window as he spoke, as if seeing the past instead of the present. 15 years ago, I lost my job at the factory. I had worked there for 25 years, suddenly. They said they did not need me anymore. I was 50 years, old with no skills except factory work. I felt useless and scared. He reached under the counter and pulled out his wallet. From inside, he took out a small piece of paper, worn then from years of folding and unfolding. Your gran came to see me a week after I lost my job. She said she had something that might help. She gave me this page from her book, Mr. Davies read. The words aloud. Setbacks are setups for comebacks. Every ending is also a beginning. The skills that made you valuable before will make you valuable again. Just in a new way. Emma recognized the handwriting as belonging to yet another person. How many people had contributed to her grandmother's collection? That page gave me courage. Mr. Davies continued. I used my savings to open this shop. It was scary at first, but I remembered those words whenever I felt afraid. Now I employ 3 people and we serve the whole neighborhood. He handed Emma the worn page. She added it to her growing collection. Treating it like the treasure it was as Emma walked home. That evening, she realized something important. Her grandmother had not just collected these stories. She had shared them with people who needed hope. The torn pages were not accidents or damage. They were gifts. Given at exactly the right time to exactly the right people. Each person had kept their page safe for years, like a talisman against despair. The book had been broken apart on purpose, scattered throughout the community to spread comfort and strength. Emma felt excitement building in her chest. If Mrs. Thompson and Mr. Davies had pages, how many other people in town might have pieces of her grandmother's book? How many more stories were waiting to be discovered? She quickened her pace toward home, eager to plan her next day's searching. The mystery was growing deeper. And so was her hope. Over the next few days, Emma continued her search through the town. She visited the post office, the bakery, and the small medical clinic at each place. She found people who remembered her grandmother and the special book. More importantly, she found more missing pieces. At the post office, Mrs. Harris showed Emma a page about Alice, a woman who had grown up very poor. Alice's family had no money for school supplies or proper clothes. Other children made fun of her torn shoes and old dresses, but Alice loved learning more than anything else in the world. She studied by candlelight and borrowed books from anyone who would lend them. Eventually, she became a teacher and spent 40 years helping children who came from poor families just like hers. The baker, Mr. Wilson, had kept a story about James, a man who had been lonely for most of his life. James was very shy and found it hard to talk to people. He spent years eating dinner alone and walking by himself in the park. One day, he started feeding the ducks at the pond. Other people began stopping to talk with him about the ducks, slowly. James learned to make friends. He discovered that kindness to animals helped him connect with people too. Each story Emma found showed ordinary people finding extraordinary strength during difficult times. She began to see patterns in the stories. People faced loss, fear, poverty, loneliness, and sickness, but they all found ways to keep going. They helped each other. They discovered that their problems could become their purpose. Emma decided to visit Sunset Nursing Home on the edge of town. She had heard that several elderly residents had known her grandmother well. The building was old, but clean, with flower gardens outside every window. At the front desk, Emma asked to speak with someone who had known Rose Bennett. The nurse smiled and led her to a sunny sitting room where an elderly woman sat reading a magazine. Mrs. Patterson, the nurse said gently, "This young lady would like to ask you about Rose Bennett." Mrs. Patterson looked up with bright blue eyes. She was small and thin, with white hair and a warm smile. When she saw the torn book in Emma's hands, her face lit up with recognition. "Oh, my goodness," Mrs. Patterson said, reaching out to touch the book. "I have not seen this treasure in years. You must be Emma. Rose talked about you all the time." Emma sat down next to Mrs. Patterson, who seemed eager to share her memories. "Your grandmother started this project after she faced her own dark time," Mrs. Patterson explained. "She was young then, maybe 25 years old. She had been married for 3 years and was expecting her first baby." Mrs. Patterson paused, her eyes growing sad. "Rose lost that baby when it was born. The doctors could not save the child. Rose fell into a deep sadness. She would not eat or leave her house. She felt like life had no meaning anymore." Emma felt her heart tighten. She had never known about this tragedy in her grandmother's past. But then something beautiful happened. Mrs. Patterson continued. "The neighbors began visiting Rose. They brought food and flowers. More importantly, they began sharing their own stories of loss and survival. Mrs. Chen told Rose about losing her parents in the war. Mr. O'Brien shared how he had overcome drinking problems. Mrs. Garcia talked about raising 5 children alone after her husband died." Mrs. Patterson smiled at the memory. Rose realized that everyone carries secret pain, but everyone also carries secret strength. She started writing down these stories of survival and hope. She said that when people shared their struggles, it made the burdens lighter for everyone. Emma began to understand something important. Her grandmother had not just collected stories randomly. She had gathered them because she knew how much they could help people during hard times. "Rose discovered that hope is contagious," Mrs. Patterson said. "When one person shares how they survived something difficult, it gives other people courage to face their own problems." Mrs. Patterson reached into her purse and pulled out 2 pages from the book. "Your grandmother gave me these when I was recovering from a stroke 5 years ago. I felt useless and scared about getting old." She showed Emma the pages. One told about a woman who learned to paint at age 70 after her arthritis made it hard to garden. Another described a man who started volunteering at the animal shelter after he retired, finding new purpose in caring for abandoned pets. She said that broken things could still be beautiful and useful. Mrs. Patterson continued. "Like this book, it looks damaged, but it is full of power to heal hearts." Rose tore the pages on purpose. She gave them to people exactly when they needed hope most. Emma felt understanding wash over her like warm sunlight. The book was not damaged by accident or age. Her grandmother had deliberately torn out pages and shared them throughout the community. She had created a network of encouragement that had lasted for decades. People had kept their pages safe for years, reading them whenever they felt discouraged. The torn book had become a source of strength for the entire town. "1 page at a time." Emma looked down at the growing collection of pages in her lap. Each fragment represented someone's darkest moment and their journey back to light. Her grandmother had built something extraordinary, a community connected by shared stories of survival and hope, for the first time since her grandmother's death. Emma felt proud instead of just sad. Rose Bennett had left behind something more valuable than money or possessions. She had left a legacy of compassion that continued to help people long after she was gone. That evening, Emma spread all the collected pages across her bedroom floor. She had gathered dozens of fragments over the past week. Each piece told part of someone's journey from darkness to light. As she read through them again, something unexpected began to happen. She started seeing herself in these stories. There was William, a boy who had felt completely invisible at school. Other students walked past him in the hallways as if he did not exist. He ate lunch alone every day, and never raised his hand in class, even when he knew the answers. William felt like he was disappearing a little more each day, but then William discovered that some younger children at school were struggling to read. He started staying after school to help them with their books. Slowly, William found his voice by helping others find theirs. The younger children looked forward to seeing him. Teachers began to notice his kindness. William realized that feeling invisible had taught him to see other people who felt forgotten too. Emma's chest tightened as she read this story. She had been feeling invisible since her parents started fighting at school. She sat quietly in the back of classrooms at home. Her parents were too busy arguing to notice when she was sad or scared. Another page told Mary's story. Mary was 12 when her parents divorced. She felt angry and confused. She blamed herself, wondering if she had done something wrong. Mary felt different from other children whose families were still together. She thought no one could understand her pain. But Mary's school counselor helped her join a support group for children whose parents were divorced. Mary discovered she was not alone. She learned to talk about her feelings instead of hiding them. Eventually, Mary became a counselor herself, helping other children navigate family changes. Emma felt tears starting in her eyes. Mary's story was almost exactly like her own situation. Her parents had been fighting for months before they announced their separation. Emma had spent many nights wondering if she had caused their problems somehow. She found another fragment about David, a teenager, who moved to a new town where he knew no one. David felt lost and lonely in his new school. Everything was different. The building, the teachers, the way students dressed and talked. David wanted to go back to his old town where life had been comfortable and familiar. But David's loneliness taught him to notice other new students who looked scared and alone. He started sitting with them at lunch and showing them around the school. David discovered that helping others feel welcome helped him feel at home too. His own difficult experience had given him the ability to comfort others going through the same thing. Emma realized something important as she read these stories. Her grandmother had not left her this treasure hunt by accident. These stories were not random. They were chosen specifically for Emma, showing her that her own pain could become her purpose. Emma got up from the floor and walked to her grandmother's old writing desk, which now sat in the corner of Emma's room. She opened the top drawer, looking for more clues. At the back of the drawer, she found an envelope with her name written on it in her grandmother's careful handwriting. Inside was a letter that made Emma's heart race. "My dear Emma," the letter began, "if you are reading this, you have discovered our town's greatest treasure, the strength that comes from shared stories. I know you are facing hard times now. Your parents are having problems and you feel caught in the middle. You feel alone and scared about what will happen to your family." Emma gasped. Her grandmother had known about her parents' problems before she died. The letter continued, "Remember that every person in this book started exactly where you're now, feeling broken and alone. But they chose to let their struggles become stepping stones instead of stumbling blocks. Your pain is not punishment, sweet girl. It is preparation for the person you are meant to become." Emma sat down heavily in the desk chair, still reading. "You have a gift for seeing people's hearts, Emma. You notice when others are hurting because you understand pain yourself. Use this gift to help other young people who feel lost like you do. Your story is not over. It is just beginning." The letter was signed with love and decorated with small hearts drawn in purple ink. Emma sat in her room, surrounded by dozens of story fragments, and for the first time in months, she did not feel alone. She was part of something much bigger than herself. She was connected to a community of people who had survived difficult times and chosen to help others do the same. All these people had started with problems just like hers. They had felt scared, lonely, angry, or hopeless, but they had discovered that their struggles gave them wisdom and compassion they could share with others. Emma walked to her bookshelf and took down a blank notebook. She sat at her grandmother's desk and picked up a pen. For the first time since finding the torn book, she began to write her own story. "My name is Emma," she wrote. "I am 17 years old, and my world feels like it is falling apart. My grandmother died 3 months ago, and my parents are getting divorced. I feel angry and scared most of the time, but I am learning that feeling broken does not mean I am worthless. Maybe my broken places are exactly where the light can shine through to help other people." She smiled as she wrote, finally understanding her grandmother's greatest gift. Emma made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of simply putting the old book back together, she would continue her grandmother's work. She would collect new stories from people her own age who were facing difficult times right now. The next Monday at school, Emma began paying attention in a different way. She noticed students who sat alone during lunch. She watched for people who looked sad or worried in the hallways. She remembered what her grandmother had written about having a gift for seeing people's hearts. During lunch, Emma sat next to Tom, a quiet boy from her history class. She had noticed that he always brought the same simple sandwich and never bought anything from the cafeteria. His clothes were clean but old, and his shoes had tape covering holes in the sides. "Hi, Tom," Emma said gently. "Mind if I sit here?" Tom looked surprised, but nodded. Emma did not ask about his problems directly. Instead, she talked about normal things like homework and weekend plans slowly. Tom began to relax and talk back. Over several conversations, Tom shared his story. His family had lost their house 6 months ago when his father lost his job. They were living with Tom's aunt now, sharing one small bedroom. Tom felt embarrassed about his situation and worried that other students would make fun of him if they knew. But Tom also told Emma something beautiful. His family had started volunteering at the local food bank every Saturday. Helping other families who were struggling made Tom feel less alone with his own problems. He had learned that many people faced hard times, and that helping others actually helped his whole family feel stronger. Emma asked Tom if she could write down his story. She explained about her grandmother's book and how sharing stories had helped people for years. Tom agreed, but only if Emma promised not to use his real name. Emma found Lucy next. Lucy was a smart girl who knew all the answers in class but never spoke up. During group projects, Lucy would write excellent ideas on paper but let other students present them out loud. Emma had watched Lucy's face turn red whenever teachers called on her. Emma approached Lucy carefully after English class. They walked together toward their lockers, talking about the book they had just discussed in class. Emma mentioned that she was collecting stories about how people overcame challenges. Lucy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I used to be so afraid of speaking that I could not even order food at restaurants. My parents had to do it for me." Lucy explained that her fear of speaking had made school very difficult. She had good ideas, but could never share them. She felt stupid even though her grades were excellent. Teachers thought she was not paying attention when really she was just too scared to participate. But something had changed this year. Lucy had joined the drama club, not to act, but to help with costumes and sets. Being around the theater students, who were comfortable expressing themselves, had slowly helped Lucy find her voice. She had even auditioned for a small part in the spring play and gotten the role. Emma wrote down Lucy's story too, with permission. She was beginning to understand that everyone had struggles, but many people also had victories to share. Over the next few weeks, Emma collected more stories. There was Michael, who had been bullied for being overweight, but found confidence by joining the school's gardening club. There was Sarah, whose anxiety had kept her from making friends until she started tutoring younger students in math. Each story showed the same pattern Emma had seen in her grandmother's collection. People faced problems that seemed impossible, but they found ways to turn their struggles into strengths. Often, helping others became the key to helping themselves. Emma decided to share these stories with the whole school. She asked the librarian, Mrs. Foster, if she could create a special display in the school library. Mrs. Foster was excited about the idea. Emma typed up the stories, changing names and details to protect privacy. She created a small corner near the windows where students could sit and read about other teenagers who had overcome challenges. She called it Stories of Strength and decorated it with plants and comfortable cushions. The response amazed Emma. Students began stopping by the corner between classes and during study periods. She watched as teenagers read stories that seemed to speak directly to their own situations. Some students asked Emma if they could share their own stories for the collection. Mrs. Rodriguez, the school counselor, noticed changes in the students. Something different is happening, she told Emma. Students seem more willing to talk about their problems. They seem more hopeful and less alone. Emma realized that her grandmother's book had become something new. It was no longer just a collection of old stories. It had become a bridge connecting hearts across generations and circumstances. 6 months after finding the torn book, Emma climbed back up to her grandmother's attic. She carried the book with her. But now it looked completely different. It was thick with new pages, filled with both old wisdom and fresh hope. Emma sat in the same spot where she had first discovered the book. She opened to a story she had written about her own journey through her parents' divorce and her grandmother's death. She had learned that sadness could become compassion, and loneliness could become a gift for noticing others who felt forgotten. Carefully, Emma tore out one page from her own story. She folded it gently and placed it in an envelope. Tomorrow, she would give it to Jennifer, a new student who looked lost and scared in the hallways. Emma smiled as she held the book. She finally understood her grandmother's greatest lesson. Some of the most beautiful things in life come from being broken and rebuilt with love. The torn book had taught an entire community that sharing pain makes it lighter, and sharing hope makes it grow stronger. The cycle would continue, one torn page at a time.